Futures Lab here at the University of Washington, the culmination of which was a big report. One of the recommendations in that report was there's a gap in central Puget Sound of an entity that helps stitch together a lot of the work of conservation organizations that are already working effectively to protect open space. But it's not connected across the 4 counties at that sort of system scale, and it's not connected to the work that's happening in our urban communities. So how do we build an organization to fill that gap? And what we're launching, or we're building to launch formally down the road, is called the Emerald Alliance for People, Nature, and Community. And it's important that we put people first, because it's about how we plan for the future of central Puget Sound around the livability of our communities, and that really is rooted in what do people need to be healthy living in this region, and how do we start with that as we build and we decide where growth goes. As we know, we've got a lot of growth predicted for this region, and we've got open spaces that are treasured. How do we mobilize all those resources together and build a stronger political movement that has a shot to advocate for the new funding that's needed to protect open space at a regional scale? Again, predicated on that collective impact notion that a small group focused on the work of its partners, not focused on itself. And so you'll hear this afternoon from the director of the Intertwine Alliance, and that's one of our models, one of our key models at how this work can be done and done effectively at a bigger regional scale. So with that, I'm going to transition over to Dale, and he's going to share a little really innovative adaptation of collective impact in the research realm.
Thanks, Tracy. So this is actually going back before the Urban Waters Partnership. I mentioned that Urban Waters Partnership was an outgrowth of another collective impact effort that we really didn't even realize at the time was a collective impact effort, and it's really different because it relates to research. Most collective impact efforts are around environmental projects and environmental improvement, poverty, social equity concerns, topics like that. But this was an outgrowth of a project that Kathy Wolf and I co-led for about 7 years that really came about unconventionally, and we didn't even realize we were doing it. In retrospect, we realized that it was a kind of a classic collective impact effort around research. The Forest Service in the PNW region has not been noted for doing urban forestry research. In about 2009, they asked me if I'd be willing to head up an urban forestry research effort, and I said, oh yeah, sure, I'd love to. Very important, hot topic. I don't know anything about urban forestry research. So they said, no problem. Kathy Wolf is right in her backyard, and she's the best. So we literally put together a package to bring Kathy Wolf on half-time through an interagency personnel agreement, and then decided we needed to identify what it is that we were going to, how are we going to approach this effort, brand new research effort in the research station around urban forestry research. And what we ended up doing was deciding we weren't going to decide it on our own. We wanted to hear from practitioners. We wanted to hear from the folks in the field. What is it they thought an urban forestry research program ought to include? And we were hoping it would be a little broader than just classic urban forestry. And so we started holding meetings with community leaders, agency leaders, urban forestry professionals, and practitioners throughout the region, and asked them 3 questions. We didn't want to say, what research needs do you have? What we wanted to do basically was say, what are your primary data needs, and what kind of information do you need to do your job better? And right around the same time that we were doing these meetings, lo and behold, we also found out that we got stimulus funding, a big slug of stimulus funding designated towards community forestry kinds of uses broadly defined. Now, stimulus funding unlike research per se, it's not supposed to be about research. Stimulus funding is about jobs, hiring people, training people, developing skills. So that brought a whole new element. We not only asked folks, well, what are your primary data and information needs, but if we should accidentally stumble into some funding, would you be willing to hire and supervise and lead these projects, first of all? And second of all, at the end, would you also agree to write a report or publish a paper? Because we are, after all, we're still scientists. We still need to provide some research productivity efforts. Would you be willing to also write a report or paper on the findings? And after we got the stimulus funding, we sat back, did a content analysis, came up, just look at the dark green boxes are the ones that have the primary themes that we heard from the practitioners and the folks in the field. Natural resources assessment, ecosystem restoration, civic environmental stewardship, ecosystem services, and human health and well-being. We identified groups of people that were willing to both work on these individual projects, bring people on board and train them, put them in the field, collect the data, and then also act as a general team, because we ended up with key representatives from all those projects that met with us monthly, talked about how their work was going, talked about sharing resources, shared measurement, all those elements on Tracy's list of what a collective impact group does. We ended up doing it, not even realizing that there was a formal definition for what it was that we were operationalizing. So I just wanted to give you a couple of examples of some of the work that we did so you can get a feel for how we were blending both a research need as well as practitioner field-oriented needs. Under urban forest assessments, we were the first group in the western United States to apply iTree Eco, and I think I saw Jana Dilly earlier. There she is in the back. She led that effort before she was with the city of Seattle, but it became instrumental in the city's forestry management plan. We worked with King County International Forestry Consultants and Earth Corps and developed a forest landscape assessment tool. And Dave Kimmett, who headed that project up, is in the audience today as well. It's a rapid assessment that land managers can use to identify forest health on their system lands and help prioritize future management needs. And it can be done relatively rapid, relatively coarse filter, but get information into the system. And Dave was able to use it to help argue for funding for stewardship effort in King County. And the last time we did an assessment, we found 16 different uses for the flat tool in and around the Puget Sound area. We had a whole bunch of topics that we called ecosystem services topics, but this was my favorite one. It was a research project looking at urban foraging, the types of plants and fungi and other natural materials that people collect in forests and parks in the Seattle area. And we did it with the Institute for Culture and Ecology and folks from UW. This is Melissa Pohl, one of the co-leads for that project. They identified almost 500 different species of plants and fungi that people collect in forests and parks in the Seattle area. And it was written up in national outlets, National Geographic, NPR, and a whole bunch of other national outlets. And now it's been replicated in several other cities as well. A couple of different studies we did on citizen-based stewardship assessments, stewardship mapping activity that basically we asked the organizations where they were active, what kinds of activities they were doing, and then we put them on maps so that one can see what activities are going on where the gaps are in different types of stewardship activities. And that was part of a nationwide effort. We were the second city in the United States to apply it. It's now called StewMap. Started in New York City, and we worked with colleagues in Baltimore when we were applying it. And now StewMap is pretty regular and well thought of national program. Did some studies of participant motivations and found out folks that participate in stewardship activities are as interested in social and community type motivations as they are in the environment. It's not just all about improving the environment, it's also about what you're doing with your community, with your family, with friends, socializing, which really kind of has major implications for how you message folks to get them involved in stewardship and how you retain commitment. We have a whole bunch of studies that we've worked with colleagues in the Forest Service related to the relationship between trees and nature and human health. There's a scientist on my team, Jeff Donovan in Portland, who is a quantitative wonk, loves to do large databases and quantitative modeling. So he essentially, any kind of large databases related here, energy use, crime rates, a variety of different health databases, and then correlating with trees, location of trees, and access to nature. So the pictures there of Toledo, Ohio, a street that's primarily ash trees, and that's the effect of emerald ash borer. Those two pictures were only taken a couple years apart from each other. And he found a higher rate of respiratory and cardiovascular deaths in the cities where emerald ash borer was active. This is a site that I know that probably the vast majority of you are aware of. It's Kathy Wolf's Green Cities Good Health site. If you haven't seen it, you really need to check it out. I just asked her about an hour ago, and she said they now have, they're summarizing both peer review and gray literature articles related to the relationship between nature and health and well-being. Now they have 12 different themes that they have the articles organized by and summarized by. And she is now essentially, what I like to say, is mining those articles for broader research questions that she could ask. They have a series of papers on economic values of trees in urban and nature in urban areas. She's now working with a couple of different nonprofits to put together practitioner guides for the values and for design features related to nature in such a way to maximize well-being and benefit, human health benefit potential. So this is outside our doors. She did with colleagues from the Nature Conservancy. Outside our doors, the benefits of cities where people and nature thrive. And finally, I just wanted to talk about one other study, which was not actually a study of related to the collective impact effort, but it's important because it's leading our thinking into what can be the next generation. How can we make a collective impact research effort work into the future? This is another one of Jeff Donovan's studies in Portland. He used tree moss and lichens as bioindicators of air pollution. They're epiphytic, they don't have roots, and so they absorb what's in the atmosphere, including toxins and pollutants of various kinds. So they collected 300 samples throughout the city of Portland, identified 22, they did analysis for 22 different toxics, found 10 hotspots. That's the top map there. Those are all of the sampling sites with hotspots of different kinds of toxics identified. And the lower map, probably the most important one, and one that many of you may have heard about. Jeff used his magical statistical analysis to look at the declination rates of air pollution in the atmosphere and identify how far they spread, and then did this heat density map. This is just cadmium down below in the reddish areas are up to 700 times EPA standards of cadmium in the atmosphere, and they found out they were related to glass plating plants, 2 glass plating plants. And one of them ended up closing immediately after the results were found. And another one, they changed the operating procedures to reduce the cadmium and arsenic, because they were both a result of the processes. So what this got me thinking about was, this is science. You know, he just basically got 3 statisticians, a lichenologist, and they got together and they just did it. But what it got me thinking was, This is a relatively easy process to collect the moss, to prepare the mosses for analysis, then it goes to a chemical lab. And then the results have been used by citizen groups and activist groups to basically hold Department of Environmental Quality and the City of Portland and others to task for identifying and helping to curb air pollution within their areas. So what it got us thinking about was what might a participatory science effort look like? How might we organize getting scientists with community activists, community leaders, and residents together around questions of research and doing research projects together? So this is a diagram, thanks to Bill Daniel, who is a retired faculty from our public health, the School of Public Health here at UW. Each one of those wings represents a different science topic or research topic. It doesn't have to be any specific topics. We're not trying to explain the planet. It's science topics that have both community and resident interest and research scientist interest. So number 3 going down to the right-hand side is moss lichen research. Why can't we collect the lichens and the mosses and do that analysis in the Green Duwamish landscape? Looking at everything from the highly industrial core where people are living, going up through the residential neighborhoods, up into suburban areas, up into urban, and then looking at the differences and seeing what effect transportation has, what effect industry has on people and where they live. This was a central question for the folks in South Park and Georgetown and the local communities in and around the industrial areas and the transportation areas. What's the air quality? Another going out to the right is extreme heat. StuMap is the one, but those are just scientists that I know would love to work with community groups in citizen science-oriented activities or participatory action research activities, work with the local groups to help collect data, collect the information of question and interest to local communities that are also science-based questions that are publishable, and get them together on a regular basis with the inner circle there, the solid circle, are areas of overlap for all the groups, like trees, vegetation, environmental justice. All of the research topics have an environmental justice concern and element. So those are sort of the integrative data themes, and then the dotted line is essentially what we're calling a core collaborative group. And the core collaborative group would be made up both of citizen leadership groups, college internship organizers, and scientists that would work on a regular basis, identify projects, identify funding sources, hopefully, identify group partners, that's the collective impact notion, the group partners who would be interested in working together on those projects. And in an idealistic Blahna world, I could see some of those projects, like the Moss Project, for example, becoming adopted by local communities and community groups, and the data collected every maybe 5 years. Are we really getting better at cleaning up air pollution or doing stewardship mapping? Are we really restoring the areas that need to be restored where the gaps are? And I could see these projects becoming adapted, long-term projects where all we need is the coordinating backbone group of a couple people to make sure that we have a core collaborative group working on into the future. So that was it. That's all I've got, and I would be happy. And Tracy, thank you very much. Sorry, I had to rush a little bit at the end. We were running short. Yeah.
I was wondering if you could give any estimates of the costs and issues and problems in trying to actually do a study of the moss and lichens. I know in the papers that I've read in the past, actually science airplanes showing his experience of the bryophytes and the lichens. I know some studies where in the cities, the moss and lichens help people. So we're saying we're actually doing pretty good, we still have some.
And I'm glad you asked that because we've been talking about that for about 3 days, 3 months with EPA and other organizations. They literally, it costs $50,000 for the chemical analysis. And, well, hang on 1 second, because it's actually very positive. Because the organization, so like our lichenologist told us, you collect the data, we can get the chemical analysis done. Because of the agencies have a vested interest then, and because of the political sensitivity of the question. So the real question is, what does it cost to collect the data? And in that case, it's really a matter of hiring and working with a few community leaders or leaders of internships. And I'm thinking it could, and then they feel the participants collect the data, residents or volunteers to collect the data, and that's a lot less expensive than that. So what they told me, our lichenologist has told me, if we get the data, they'll take care of the cost of analysis. So I'm thinking $20,000 to $30,000 to get a group, to get group leaders together and to help pay stipends for volunteers or collectors. Yeah.
Who's the they?
Who's
They
the
would
they?
pay.
Pardon?
You said they would pay. Who's the they?
Okay, that it would be it'd be the Forest Service and well, actually both of them are the Forest Service. So we have a branch called FIA, Forest Inventory and Assessment. And their job is to measure trees. The lichenologist and our public health person both work for FIA. So I think they were talking about Forest Service.
Hi, I'd like to loop back to your last point on stewardship continuum. You said it would be great if some groups would continue on with this.
Yes.
And I work for David Resource Group. I travel up and down the western states, and I work with a lot of nonprofits. And this has been a problem over and over and over again. I'm curious about your thoughts on how to break down the barriers that we experience. Oftentimes they're money and then coordination to get to that dream that community groups, 1 to 7 people just kind of continue on every few years down the road and loop back to the scientists to connect the dots.
Yeah. So first of all, I'd just like to say Davey also helped us in our Pine Tree project, so thank you very much. There's so many participants in all these projects, I couldn't even begin to hit everybody. So what I meant by the continuum is the notion that you've got everything from the scientists, and a lot of times research gets a fairly negative rep because of the scientist who comes in and says, this is the project, this is what I can publish, this is my specialty area, what I do, and here you guys can help me. Why don't you collect the data? And of course, it's saving money for the scientists. And so that's kind of what's become known as citizen science, and so it's got a fairly negative rap as a result. But on the other end of the continuum are really the organic topics that emerge from local communities and from community groups. What are the topics of key concern to them? In the Duwamish right now, they've built a couple of green walls because of all the transportation corridors. I think it's in Georgetown. A couple of transportation corridors. The green walls help knock down some of the pollution. They'd love to know both noise abatement effects and air quality effects, because then they can use that information to go argue for more green walls and get the funding for it. But they don't have the expertise. So there's this hope we're putting together right now, a typology of different participatory action research designs that are more, and for the ones that we're talking about, it can be anywhere along the continuum. It could be, and that's why the notion of the core collaborative group would be hearing ideas and bringing partners together. And it could be a scientist coming in and saying, we need data on water temperature, knowing the effects of trees on water temperature, which is a critical salient question, important for politics in the community, but you don't have community members clamoring for water temperature necessarily. but the scientists we have working with us would love to work with community groups. Well, it could be a community group for an outdoor exercise, for training purposes, could be an internship, like a college, Antioch College or Green River Community College internship or capstone course for students. There's this whole array of different approaches. And I think we take too much of a, here's a project, this is what we do, and that's it, and then we move on, sort of one-off notion. The idea of the group would be that there could be a whole variety of different approaches to bring scientists and community groups together. I've just been told I need to wrap up, so I guess that's it. Anyway, thank you.